My name is Brittany Rosenstein. And the night my mother-in-law called me a whore at my own Christmas dinner, I finally understood what kind of family I had married into. If you have ever been told you should be grateful for a life that is quietly killing you, you are not alone. And if something like that has ever happened to you, I want you to leave a comment. Not for drama, but so other people reading it know they are not alone either. People think money insulates you from pain. It does not. It just buys quieter rooms to cry in. Before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe. These stories take time to make, and your support keeps them coming. I met Grant Rosenstein when I was 22. He was 34. He walked into a charity dinner in Manhattan like he owned the air. He did, in a way. His family's name carried weight. The kind of weight that made other men straighten their backs and women lower their voices. He had that prep school look. Crisp. Controlled. That polished, sunlit confidence that never asked permission. He smiled at me like he had already decided. I was not supposed to be there. I had been invited by a friend I worked with. I was the daughter of a union electrician and a hairdresser who still clipped coupons. I had good grades. I had good manners. I had no lineage. But I did have something else. Girl next door good looks, people called it. Then they would pause, and their eyes would change, and they would say, "Supreme beauty," like it surprised them. Like it was something I should apologize for. Grant did not apologize for anything. He leaned in and said, "You look like you escaped from somewhere sensible." I laughed. He handed me a glass I did not ask for. He talked like the world was a series of rooms that could be unlocked with the right key. When he asked me out, I said yes. When he sent a car, I stared at it for 10 minutes before I got in. When he took me to places I had only seen in magazines, I thought, maybe this is what people mean when they say life can change overnight. A year later he proposed. Against his family's will. His mother, Judith Rosenstein, did not even stand up when we announced it. She looked at my ring, then at my face and said, "It is sweet that you believe that means something." Grant squeezed my hand. Tight. Private. Possessive. Then he smiled at them like a man who had already won. That was the first time I felt it. The shape of my life snapping into a frame that was not mine. We got engaged in spite of them. And that is when the prenup happened. They told me it was standard. They told me it was for everyone's comfort. They told me it would protect the children we did not have yet. They told me I was lucky they were letting me in at all. I was 23. I was in love. And I did not yet understand that rich families do not argue. They arrange. They gave me a lawyer. Their lawyer's colleague. They booked a room. They handed me a pen. Grant kissed my forehead and said, "It is just paperwork. Sign it so we can start our life." I signed it. Later, when I finally saw what it really said, I had to sit on the floor of my closet to breathe. It was not a prenup. It was a trap. A beautiful velvet-lined trap that said if I ever left, I would leave with close to nothing. The first time Grant cheated, I was pregnant. I found the messages on his phone by accident. I was reaching for directions. It lit up. A name I did not know. A heart. A photo. A hotel room mirror. I confronted him in our kitchen. Hands shaking. Voice steady because I was afraid if I cried he would call me hysterical. He looked at the screen and sighed, like I had shown him a stain on a shirt. "Britt," he said softly, "are you trying to ruin your own pregnancy with paranoia?" I said, "It is right there." He tilted his head. "That could be anything. You have no context. You are emotional. You are always emotional when you are pregnant." I said, "So you are saying it is not what it looks like?" He stepped closer and brushed my hair back like I was a child. "It looks like what you want it to look like." Then he smiled. "Do you want to be the kind of woman who goes digging for pain?" That was the first lesson. He did not deny. He redirected. He made it my flaw. After our first child, there was a second, then a third, then a fourth, then a fifth, 5 children in 20 years, 5 birthdays, 5 Christmas mornings, 5 little sets of hands reaching for mine when the world felt too sharp. Grant was a good father in public. That mattered to the Rosensteins. He kissed foreheads. He coached a little league team once for a photo. He posted the family portrait every year. He had a whole personality designed for wealthy rooms. Behind closed doors, he was not cruel. Not in the obvious way. He was nice to me. He bought things. He booked trips. He said, "You deserve it, and look how lucky we are, and I love you," as long as I stayed in the part he had assigned. Then he cheated. Again. And again. One 20-something after another. Always the same type. Tall. Thin. Soft mouth. Glossy hair. Eyes that looked eager for permission. I tolerated it because the truth was humiliating. I stayed because the prenup sat in the drawer like a gun. I stayed because I had 5 children and I would not hand them into the claws of Judith Rosenstein's influence. I stayed because the luxury was real, and the threat was real, and the world does not hand you a clean exit just because you are tired. At first I was a trophy wife, then a trophy wife and homemaker, then just homemaker. Once age and life crept in a little and the world stopped calling me dazzling and started calling me still lovely. That is how it happens. It is not a cliff. It is a slow lowering of the lights until you are grateful for shadows. Grant's family wealth was multi-generational. They had clout, real clout. Not celebrity. Not flashy. Power with paperwork. Power with phone calls that never hit voicemail. When people say the Rosensteins, they say it like they expect doors to open. Grant grew the business from tens of millions into hundreds of millions. He was in his prime when I met him. He carried that self-made glow like armor. They owned logistics, warehousing, real estate, a private equity arm that sat quietly in the background like a predator with good manners. There were properties in New York, Aspen, Palm Beach, and then the international layer. Monaco trips were normal. Dubai was a playground. They moved through airports like the rules were suggestions. Grant traveled to Dubai constantly. Business, he would say. He said it like a prayer. At first I went too. I smiled by infinity pools. I wore dresses I would never have dared in my old neighborhood. I watched him leave the suite in a crisp shirt and come back at midnight smelling like a different life. Then the trips became more frequent. Then I was invited less. He would kiss my cheek and say, "It is not your scene, Brit. You would be bored." Meetings. Men, you hate that. I said, "I don't hate it. I hate being left out." He laughed gently. "You are not left out. You are safe. There is a difference." Safe. That word again. Like a cage with a soft blanket. Then I noticed something. It started small. A new follow. Another. Then a pattern. Grant followed social media models. Not influencers. Not business people. Not philanthropists. Models who posed in hotel mirrors with captions about gratitude and blessings. Most of them were in their early 20s. Most of them had Dubai geotags. At first I told myself I was being stupid. Then I saw the timing. A model posts from Dubai. Grant is in Dubai. A model posts from a yacht. Grant sends a photo of a yacht rail to his friend group. A model posts a hotel balcony. I recognized the skyline because I had stood there once, holding a glass of water at 3 a.m, waiting for my husband. I did not accuse him. I did not need to. I simply began to watch, quietly, like a woman learning the layout of a burning building. The thing about living with a liar is you learn what truth feels like. It feels heavy. It sits behind your ribs. It does not go away because you change the subject. The first time I started collecting receipts, I did not even realize that is what I was doing. I told myself I was gathering clarity. I told myself I deserved to know if I was insane. I started with dates, trips, payments, a credit card charge that did not match the story, a hotel invoice emailed by mistake, an assistant's calendar invite with a name that was not a client. Then I found something bigger. Properties in my name. At first I thought it was a romantic gesture. A house in my name. A condo in my name. A small holding company with my signature on a document I barely remembered signing. You should have something, Grant said when I asked. His smile was soft. My father was old-fashioned. He always said a man should put something aside for his wife. Judith would have died before she allowed that out of kindness. But I nodded, because I was tired, and because a part of me still wanted to believe in a version of my life where I was cherished. I did not understand that the assets in my name were not gifts. They were shields. They were insulation. They were a way to keep certain things away from scrutiny. And Grant put them in my name because he believed I would never stop being grateful. He believed I was a pretty object that had learned how to behave. When you are underestimated long enough, you begin to see the full shape of your enemy's arrogance. It is not loud. It is casual. It is in the way they assume you will always do what you have always done. 8 months before Christmas, Grant's CFO, his cousin, Aaron Rosenstein, asked me to sign something at breakfast. It looked boring. It was presented as boring. He said, just moving some things around for tax efficiency. Tax efficiency. That phrase is a lullaby in rich houses. I signed, then I asked for a copy, smiling like I did not care. Aaron blinked. Then he smiled back. Of course, Brittany. The smile did not reach his eyes. That copy was the first real weapon I ever held. I brought it to a private attorney 3 weeks later. Not a family friend. Not a Rosenstein referral. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a voice that did not bend. She read it. She looked up. And she said, "Do you understand what you just became?" I said, "A cosigner." She said, "No." She tapped the page. "You became the keystone in a structure that holds back an ocean." My stomach went cold. Then she said, "And if you ever want to leave, you don't leave emotionally first. You leave legally." That was the moment I stopped hoping. That was the moment I started planning. At the time, I thought that was the worst thing that would happen. I was wrong. Because the worst thing was not the cheating. It was not the gaslighting. It was not even the prenup. The worst thing was what they did when they realized I had a spine. The Rosensteins were not loud about Christmas. They did not do matching pajamas and cinnamon-scented candles for photos. They did obscene Christmas. We hosted at our mansion in Connecticut. Not a gala. Not a black tie event. Just close family and close friends. 25 people. The inner circle. But it was still excessive beyond excess. A private chef. A pastry team. Waitstaff in crisp uniforms. A string quartet in the foyer. A decorated tree in every wing. Ice sculptures. Custom stockings. A separate gift room the size of my father's entire house. And outside, reindeer. Real reindeer brought in like a petting zoo. Handlers in insulated jackets. The children squealing. The adults laughing like it was charming, like it was normal to treat magic as a rental. Grant loved that part. Not because of the children. Because it impressed the men he wanted to impress. Judith arrived like she owned the property. She always did. She wore a cream coat and a diamond brooch shaped like a star. She kissed the air near my cheek. Her eyes looked me up and down like she was assessing inventory. "Brittany," she said, "you look fine." Her favorite word for my existence. Grant's father, Leonard Rosenstein, nodded at me and went straight to the men. Leonard was quieter than Judith. He spoke less. But when he did speak, people listened like it was a verdict. Our friends arrived. Their friends arrived. People with private schools and private planes and private opinions. People who spoke softly but watched everything. Grant was in his element. He wore a dark sweater. A watch that could pay for a college degree. His hair neat. His smile ready. And then I saw it. A waitress. Young. Maybe 23. 24. Pretty in that effortless way that comes from not having been worn down yet. Grant watched her walk past like he had the right. I watched him watch her. I waited for him to stop. He did not. He leaned in as she poured wine for Aaron and said something that made her laugh. I felt my face stay calm. Inside, something old and sharp woke up. This was not the first time. He did it every year. A different girl. Same performance. Judith saw it too. She always saw it. And she always blamed me. I walked over and stood beside the waitress. I said, "Thank you. That is enough." My voice was polite. The girl nodded quickly and left. Grant turned to me with a smile that was almost kind. "Britt," he murmured, "do not do this tonight." I said, "Do not do what?" He laughed softly. "Make a scene. People are here." "You are better than that. Better than that." Translation: stay small. I said, "You are flirting with a girl young enough to be our daughter." His eyes sharpened. Then he smiled wider. "You are imagining things," he said. "It is a wine pour. Relax." I said, "You always do this." He leaned closer. His voice dropped into that private tone he used when he wanted to hurt me without leaving a bruise. "Do you want to talk about always?" He glanced toward the room. "Because we can talk about what happens if you embarrass me. We can talk about paperwork. We can talk about your lifestyle. We can talk about the prenup you signed with your own hand." My throat tightened. Not fear. Not anymore. Rage. I said, "Threatening me at Christmas? How original." He smiled. "It is not a threat. It is reality. I built this life. You live in it." I looked at him. And for the first time in 20 years, I did not look away. I said, "You did not build me." His face changed for half a second. Then the mask returned. He said, "Brittany, go check on the kids. I will handle the rest." Handle the rest? Like I was a chore. I stepped back. I watched him turn, already moving toward another group, already laughing like nothing happened. That is when I decided. Not later. Not tomorrow. Not after the holidays. Now. Because when you have restrained yourself for 20 years, your restraint becomes a weapon. And when you finally drop it, you don't explode. You execute. Dinner began. The table was long. Candles. Crystal. Food plated like art. The children at one end, supervised by staff. The adults at the main table laughing about investments and ski trips and that little place in Cap Ferrat. Grant sat at the head. Judith to his right. Leonard to his left. I sat beside Grant, like a display piece that matched the chair. Conversation flowed like wine. And then I saw the waitress again. She brought a dish to the table. Grant's eyes followed her. His mouth twitched like he was about to speak. I felt something settle in me. Calm. Cold. Clear. I stood up. Forks paused. Glasses stopped mid. Grant looked up at me with that warning smile. His eyes said, "Sit down." I did not sit down. I lifted my glass. Not shaking. Not even slightly. And I said, "I want to make a toast." People smiled. They expected something pretty, something grateful, something that made them feel good about themselves. Grant relaxed a fraction. He thought he still had me. I looked down the table. At Judith. At Aaron. At Leonard. At the friends who pretended not to know. At the women who had always watched me like a cautionary tale. And I said, I am grateful. Judith smiled thinly. I said, I am grateful for the life I have been allowed to live. I let the words hang. Allowed. Grant's jaw tightened. I continued. I am grateful for the trips. Monaco in the spring. Dubai whenever my husband needs a playground disguised as business. A few laughs. Uneasy. Grant's eyes flashed. I saw it. The first hint of panic. I said, I am grateful for the 5 children I brought into this family. I looked straight at Judith, and the way I was always reminded that I was lucky to be here. Judith's smile fell. Grant hissed quietly, Brittany. I smiled. Just a toast, I said. Then I turned my gaze to the room again. And since it is Christmas, and since we are all so fond of tradition, I thought I would share one of ours. Silence began to spread. The kind of silence rich people hate. It makes them visible. I said, every year my husband picks a new girl. I looked toward the waitress who had frozen near the doorway. Her face pale. Not you, sweetheart. Don't worry. You are not the story. Grant stood up halfway. His chair scraped. I raised my hand. Not dramatic. Just firm. Sit down, Grant. My voice cut through him like glass. He stared at me. The room stared at him. He sat. Judith's face went tight, like someone had pulled a cord behind it. I said, for 20 years I have been told to be grateful. I laughed softly. I have been told I am emotional, paranoid, imaginative, silly. A blue-collar girl who should not bite the hand that feeds her. Judith snapped, how dare you? I turned to her. And here I let it burn. How dare I? I nodded slowly. How dare I speak in the house I decorated? In the home I raised 5 children in the marriage I carried while your son collected girls like souvenirs. Grant said, you are making yourself look insane. There it was. The old line. The reliable knife. I smiled at him. Insane. I looked to the room. He always says that when he is caught. A friend of Leonard's coughed. A woman shifted in her seat. Grant's face tightened. He said, Brittany? Stop. I said no. I took a slow breath. And then I delivered the first real bomb. I have something else to be grateful for. I lifted my glass again. I am grateful that you underestimated me. Judith's eyes narrowed. What is this? I said, it is a Christmas gift. I looked at Grant. A gift to myself. Grant's voice went low. Don't do this. I said, too late. And then I said the line that changed everything. For years, Grant put properties in my name. I let the room absorb it. Little companies too. Holdings. Titles. Things he called gifts. Grant's face went pale. Aaron's eyes snapped toward him. Leonard's expression shifted. Just slightly. That was the first crack in the patriarch's calm. I continued. He did it to keep them away from scrutiny. I looked at the men. You know what I mean? You all do. A few faces hardened. A few eyes dropped. I said he thought I would never leave, because he thought the prenup made me powerless. Grant barked, it does. I smiled. This is the part where you shut up and listen, Grant. He stared. His nostrils flared. Judith stood abruptly. You ungrateful little... She stopped herself. Barely. I turned to Judith and said, say it. My voice was soft. Say what you have always wanted to say. Judith's mouth tightened. Her eyes burned. Grant said quickly, Mother, sit down. Judith did not sit. She leaned toward me across the table like a queen about to slap a servant. "You silly girl," she hissed, her voice loud now. Not refined. Not controlled. Vile. "Do you think you are the reason my son has anything?" She stabbed a finger toward my chest. "Women have always taken care of him. Better women. Smarter women. Prettier women. Women who know their place. You were a phase. A charity case with a pretty face. And you have been living off our name for 2 decades. The room went still. Even the children sensed it. Judith continued, louder, uglier. "You should be ashamed. You embarrassed him in front of guests because you cannot handle competition. You cannot handle that you are aging. You cannot handle that he has options. Your entire life is paid for. Every diamond. Every dress. Every trip. Monaco. Dubai. All of it." Then she leaned closer, eyes vicious. "If you leave, you will leave with nothing. Nothing. Because we made sure of it. We protected our blood. We protected our fortune. We protected our legacy from girls like you." My hands did not shake. But inside, something very old broke loose. I looked at her. And I said clearly for everyone to hear, "You just confessed to fraud at my Christmas table." Judith froze. Grant snapped, "She did not confess to anything." I said, "Oh, Grant." I smiled. "You always think your words can rewrite reality." I turned back to Judith. "You just admitted you made sure I would get nothing." I nodded. "While your son transferred assets into my name for tax reasons. While your cousin had me sign documents I asked copies for. While you all assumed I was too stupid to understand what I was holding." Leonard finally spoke. His voice calm. "Dangerous. Brittany. Stop speaking." I looked at him. And I felt something strange. Not fear. Not respect. Clarity. I said, "No, Leonard. I think I am done stopping." Grant said, "You are going to regret this." I said, "I regretted staying." Then I delivered the second bomb. I went to see my own attorney. I let the silence stretch. "Not yours. Not a Rosenstein friend." Grant's face tightened so hard it looked painful. Aaron's mouth parted slightly. Judith's eyes widened. Just a flicker. That was the first time she looked uncertain. I said, "And do you know what she told me?" I looked around the table. "She told me the prenup only works because I never challenged it." Grant said, "You will lose." I said, "No, Grant." I leaned forward slightly, voice sharpening. "You will bleed." The room exhaled in shock. A woman's hand flew to her mouth. Grant stood up fully now. "You cannot speak to me like that." I said, "I can speak to you however I want." I held his gaze. "You have spoken to me like I was furniture for 20 years. He pointed at me. "Sit down. Right now." I said no. His voice rose. "You are humiliating yourself." I said, "I am humiliating you." I smiled. "And you deserve it." Judith lunged around the table. She grabbed my arm hard. Her nails bit my skin. "You stupid, stupid girl," she spat loud enough to carry. "You think you can threaten us. You are nothing without us." I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her face. And I said, ice cold, "Take your hand off me." Judith squeezed tighter. Grant stepped toward me. "Mother." Judith snarled, "Let her learn." I did not raise my voice. I did not yank away. I simply said, "If you keep holding me, Judith, I will scream." I smiled slightly. And everyone in this room will remember the moment Judith Rosenstein put her hands on the mother of her grandchildren. Judith let go like I had burned her. I lifted my glass again. My arm had a red mark. I did not hide it. I said, "This is what you do." I looked around. You smile, you whisper, you threaten, you pretend you are refined. Then I looked at Judith. But you are not refined. My voice sharpened. You are a bully with jewelry. A few guests looked down. Nobody defended her. They feared her, but they did not love her. Good. Let them watch her fall. I turned back to Grant. You followed models to Dubai like a teenage boy with a credit card. I let that land. You thought I did not see. You thought I did not connect the dates, the geotags. The hotel balconies I recognized because I stood there waiting for you. Grant snapped, that is disgusting. I laughed once. No, Grant. I leaned in. What is disgusting is you pretending you are offended by your own behavior. A guest shifted. A man cleared his throat. Grant said, venomous now, you are paranoid. You have always been paranoid. I said no. I shook my head slowly. I was trained. That line hit. I saw it in the room. Women's eyes. Men's discomfort. I continued. You trained me to doubt myself so you could do whatever you wanted. I pointed at him. And tonight you made the mistake of doing it where they could see. Grant's jaw clenched. He looked around the table trying to gather allies with his eyes. But the room was different now. It was not his stage anymore. I said, here is the truth. I spoke clearly, each sentence a nail. You cannot force me to hand back the properties in my name without dragging your own structure into the light. I looked at Aaron. You cannot litigate without discovery. Aaron's face went stiff. I looked at Leonard. You cannot threaten me without witnesses. Leonard's gaze hardened. I looked back at Grant. And you cannot destroy my reputation without risking yours. I paused. Because I have receipts. And the kind of receipts that don't belong in a courtroom. I smiled. They belong in boardrooms. Grant's face drained of color. Judith hissed, you would not dare. I said, would I not? I tilted my head. Because I am the silly girl? Then I delivered the third bomb. The one that makes this story pop off. I already moved. I said it softly. Calm. Like I was describing dessert. Grant blinked. What? I said you thought I was waiting for permission. I smiled. I was waiting for proof. Judith said, voice trembling now, what did you do? I looked at her, and I let my smile become beautiful and cruel. I went to the American equivalent of your precious Swiss banking fantasies. I nodded. South Dakota. A few people frowned. Those who knew. Those who understood. Their eyes changed. I continued. I sat in a quiet office with people who don't put their names on doors. I looked at Leonard, and I learned what I actually am in your structure. Grant's voice came out rough. Stop talking. I said no. I leaned forward. You used me as the clean layer. I said it plainly. You put assets in my name because you assumed I would never become a problem. I let the silence expand until it felt like pressure. Then I said, now I am your problem. One of the wives at the table whispered, oh my God. Good. Grant snarled, you cannot do anything. You have no idea what you are talking about. I said, Grant. I smiled sweetly. You are so used to lying that you think truth is a bluff. Then I lowered my glass and spoke like a judge. Try to take anything from me. I looked at him hard. Grant's hands clenched. His voice rose. You are nothing. Do you understand? Nothing. You were a pretty girl I picked up because I was bored. I lifted you out of a life that would have swallowed you, and you think you can bite me. There it was. The real him, finally unmasked. I felt my chest tighten. Not heartbreak. Release. I said thank you. My voice was steady. Thank you for finally saying it in front of other people. Grant spat, I don't care who hears. I said, oh, you do. I looked around the table. He cares more than anyone. Grant's friend, a man with silver hair and smug eyes, muttered, "Brittany, you are making a spectacle." I snapped my gaze to him, and I let the restraint drop further. "Don't speak to me." My voice cut like a blade. "You sat in my home for years. You drank my wine. You watched my husband humiliate me and you called it charm." His face reddened. I turned back to the table. "If any of you have ever sat here and thought, 'Poor Brittany, she is so lucky,'" I smiled. "I hope you choke on that thought." Grant slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." I leaned toward him and hissed, finally letting the rage show. "No." I pointed at him. "You do not get to end this. You do not get to control the moment you lose." His eyes narrowed. He said, low and threatening, "You will regret this tomorrow." I said, "Tomorrow?" I laughed. "Grant, tomorrow I am still rich." That landed like a punch. Judith's mouth fell open. I continued, voice rising, heat finally showing. "You wrote a prenup when I was 23 and you thought you locked me in." I shook my head. "You did not lock me in." I leaned forward. "You locked yourself in with me?" Then I looked at Judith, and I let it burn. "You called me a charity case." I smiled. "I was your insurance policy." Judith's face twisted. Leonard said, dangerously quiet, "You will stop. This is family." I snapped back, "Family?" My laugh was sharp. Family is not 5 children watching their mother swallow humiliation so their father can keep a public image. Grant barked, "The children are fine." I turned to him, eyes blazing. "No." I said it hard. "They are not fine. They are learning that love means silence. They are learning that power means cruelty." I pointed at him. "And tonight they are going to learn something else." I took a breath. "They are going to learn what happens when a woman stops being grateful." Grant's face twisted. "You think you are some heroine." I said no. I shook my head. "I think I am a woman who finally realized the only thing more expensive than leaving is staying." Then, because you wanted it to pop, I drove the knife deeper. And I am going to say this clearly. I looked around the table. Grant Rosenstein has cheated on me with so many women that he stopped remembering their names. I lifted my chin. And he did it because he thought I was trapped. Grant roared, "Shut up." I said, "Make me." The room went dead still. Then I did the thing that turns heads. I reached into the pocket of my dress. I pulled out an envelope, simple, white, ordinary, the most dangerous kind. I placed it on the table. Grant stared at it. Judith stared at it. I said, "Inside this envelope is a list of entities." I spoke slowly. Companies, properties, holdings. I tapped it once, and the signature chains that connect them. Aaron's face went tight. He knew. I said, "If you fight me." I looked at Grant. "If you try to take what is in my name." I looked at Leonard. "If you try to threaten me." I looked at Judith. "If you try to smear me." I paused, then smiled. "This envelope will not go to court." I tilted my head. "It will go to people who ask questions you cannot charm away." Grant whispered, "You would not." I leaned closer, voice low, vicious. "I already did." I smiled. "Not this envelope." But enough. That was the moment Grant realized. Not suspected. Not feared. Realized. He had been sleeping beside his executioner. A woman near the end of the table whispered, "Grant, what is she talking about?" Grant snapped, "Nothing." I said, "He is lying." I smiled at her. "He lies like he breathes." Judith's voice shook, "You cannot destroy this family." I looked at her. And I said quietly, "You destroyed it." I glanced at Grant. "You just did not think you would ever pay." Grant's voice went icy. "You will not see a dime. You think a few properties in your name makes you powerful. I will crush you." I laughed. Not pretty. You will try. I nodded. And you will fail. He spat. We will see. I said we will. I looked around the table, and since you all love tradition, I raised my glass one last time. Here is mine. I took a breath. Then I said clearly, Grant, I am leaving you. I paused. And I am keeping what you put in my name. I smiled. And if you try to touch it, I will let the world see how the Rosensteins really keep their money clean. Silence. Then Grant did something he had never done. He looked afraid. He masked it quickly. But I saw it. I saw the fear. Judith's voice rose to a shriek. You little whore. Grant barked, Mother. Judith lunged again, and Leonard grabbed her arm hard. He hissed something in her ear. She froze, trembling. Aaron's eyes flicked to Grant, and for the first time I saw the family fracture. Because that is what happens when you threaten rich people with sunlight. They don't unite. They calculate. Grant's friend stood up. Brittany, this is insane. I turned to him. You are not my judge. I said it calmly. You are a guest. Then I looked at the room again. And now I am going to ask you all something. I let my eyes move across faces. Has anyone here ever been betrayed and told to be grateful for it? A few women shifted. A few men looked away. I nodded. If you have, I said softly, leave a comment. Tell me. Because I spent 2 decades thinking I was alone. Grant snarled, don't turn this into some performance. I smiled. Oh, Grant. I leaned toward him. You made it a performance every time you smiled in public and gaslit me in private. I straightened. This is just the curtain coming down. I pushed my chair back. I stood, my hands steady. Grant stepped toward me, voice sharp. You walk out that door and you will regret it. I leaned in close, so close he could smell my perfume, so close he could see that I was not afraid. I whispered, I already left you months ago. I smiled. You just did not notice because you were busy following girls to Dubai. His face contorted with rage. He raised his hand slightly. Not to hit, to intimidate. Leonard said, cold Grant. Grant froze. I looked at Leonard, at Judith, at the entire table. Then I turned, and I walked out. Outside, the reindeer shifted and snorted in the cold. The children's laughter floated from a distance, like it belonged to another universe. Snow fell softly onto the manicured lawn. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt something I could not buy. Freedom. I did not take a suitcase that night. I did not need to. Because the truth was, the most valuable thing I owned was not jewelry or real estate. It was leverage. And the Rosensteins had handed it to me, piece by piece, because they thought I was too pretty to be dangerous. They were wrong. January came like a blade. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just cold and certain. The kind of month that reveals what people really are when the decorations come down and there is nothing left to hide behind. Grant did not call me the next morning. Not once. He sent his assistant instead. A message. Short. Polished. Mrs. Rosenstein, Mr. Rosenstein would like to meet privately to discuss next steps. Like I was a vendor. Like I was a meeting. I did not reply. By noon, the calls started. First Grant. Then Judith. Tina. Then a number I did not recognize that I knew was a lawyer pretending to be neutral. I watched my phone light up like a dying star. And I felt nothing. Because I had already done the most important thing months before. I had stopped believing I could be talked back into the cage. I was staying at a quiet hotel in Manhattan. Not flashy. Not a place Grant's people would check first. I had one suitcase, one tote bag, and a folder in my laptop that held the shape of my freedom. My attorney, Marla, arrived on January 3rd. She sat across from me in a private lounge and placed her phone face down like the world could wait. She said, "Tell me exactly what happened at Christmas." So I did. Every word Judith said. Every threat Grant slipped between his teeth. Every face that looked away. Marla listened without blinking. Then she nodded once. "They think you performed. They don't understand you executed." I stared at her. "I need to know what is real, what they can do, what I can do." Marla folded her hands. "Brittany, they will try 3 things." She lifted one finger. "Fear." A second finger. "Shame." A third. "And paperwork." I swallowed. "The prenup." Marla's mouth tightened. "The prenup is a weapon, but weapons work best when nobody checks if they are loaded." I exhaled slowly. Marla leaned in a fraction. "You are not going to win by screaming about cheating." She paused. "You win by making the Rosensteins terrified of sunlight." That afternoon we flew. Not commercial. Not private jet. Something in between. Quiet. A charter through a brokerage Marla trusted. We landed in the Midwest under a sky the color of paper. No paparazzi. No spectacle. Just cold air and a black car waiting with no logo. "This is ridiculous," I muttered as the driver loaded my bag. Marla looked at me. "It is not ridiculous." She said it gently. "It is how power hides." The office in South Dakota was not what people imagine when they hear the words private trust. It was not marble and gold. It was clean. Minimal. A building you would never notice if you drove past. Inside, a woman in a gray suit greeted us like we were expected. Because we were. Her name was Elaine. She did not offer warmth. She offered competence. "Mrs. Rosenstein," she said. Then she looked at me, actually looked, and her voice softened a fraction. "I understand this is difficult. We will keep it simple. Simple." That was what I needed. Elaine led us into a conference room with a view of nothing but winter. She placed a folder on the table. "Your name appears as a beneficial owner and signatory across several entities." She slid a page forward. "Here." Then another. "And here." My stomach tightened. Marla said, "Calm, explain it to her like she is not a banker." Elaine nodded once. "Your husband's family built layers." She spoke clearly, slow enough to understand. "One layer is the public layer, the companies people know, the assets people assume exist." She tapped the table. "Then there is the private layer, the layer that protects the public layer. It is made of trusts and holding companies and ownership structures." I stared at the pages. "My name." Over and over. Elaine continued. "In many of these, you are the clean face." She did not say it cruelly. She said it like a weather report. "You are not an executive. You are not associated with operational decisions. That makes you useful." Useful. The words stung. Marla asked, "What happens if she leaves?" Elaine looked at me. "If you do nothing, you remain a component. They can pressure you. They can try to force transfers. They can try to bury you in legal costs." She paused. "If you move correctly, you become the wedge that makes their structure unstable." I whispered, "They will come after me." Elaine nodded. "They will." Then she added, "But they will be careful. They cannot risk discovery." Marla said, "Tell her what discovery means for people like them." Elaine's mouth tightened. "For a family with international connections, discovery is not only embarrassing." She met my eyes. "It is dangerous. Banks do not like surprises. Partners do not like questions. Boards do not like unknown risk." I sat back slowly. "So what do we do?" Marla reached into her bag and pulled out a thin stack of papers. "We build a clean exit. You keep what is legitimately yours. You sever what exposes you. You do it quietly and in the right order. Elaine nodded. And you stop speaking in public, she said it kindly. The Christmas moment is done. You don't repeat it, you let them fear what you might do without ever doing it. I laughed once. Low. They think I am a silly girl. Marla's eyes sharpened. Then let them keep thinking that. She leaned forward. Underestimation is your greatest asset. That night, in my hotel room, I stared at the ceiling and remembered the beginning. 22. Grant's smile. His hand at the small of my back as if he owned my spine. And I remembered Dubai. Not the glitter. Not the towers. The silence. The way he would leave the suite and tell me he had meetings. The way he would return and toss his cufflinks into a dish, indifferent. The way he would kiss me once and look past me as if I was furniture. I remembered standing on a balcony one night, wind warm against my skin, and looking down at the city. I had been 28. 2 kids then. Another on the way. Grant had been in the shower. His phone lit up on the bed. A message. A heart. A picture of a girl's legs in a car. The caption read, "When do I get my Dubai?" I had stared at it until my eyes went dry. When Grant came out, I had asked softly, "Who is that?" He had smiled like I had asked something adorable. "Brittany," he said, "you have to stop doing this to yourself." I had whispered, "Doing what?" He had stepped close and cupped my jaw. Not tender. Controlling. Looking for demons. He kissed my forehead. "You are safe. You are taken care of. That is what matters." Safe. Taken care of. He had said it like a lullaby. And I had swallowed my rage like medicine. Back then I thought endurance was love. Now I knew endurance was just practice for war. On January 5th, Grant finally showed his hand. Not with a call. With a delivery. A thick envelope arrived at the hotel. No return address. My name in crisp black ink. Inside was a letter on legal stationery. It said in careful language that I was in breach of confidentiality and that my public statements at Christmas constituted defamation, and that immediate steps would be taken to protect the Rosenstein family. There was also something else. A second letter, smaller. A personal note. "Britt, you are spiraling. Come home. We can fix this. Don't make me do things I don't want to do." I read that last line 3 times. Don't make me. Marla read it, then laughed, sharp and humorless. "He thinks you are still his project." I said, "He will try to take the properties." Marla nodded. "He will try." Then she looked up. "And we will let him try." That weekend I returned to Connecticut. Not to the mansion. To a smaller property in my name. A coastal house Grant had called my retreat. A gift he forgot he had given. I arrived with security. Private. Quiet. 2 men who looked bored and therefore dangerous. I walked through the house slowly. It smelled like clean linen and money and distance. I had cried in this house before. Now it felt like a command center. On Monday, Grant filed. Of course he did. Not divorce. Not yet. He filed a petition for emergency relief demanding I return certain documents and marital property. Marla's eyes sparkled when she read it. He is panicking. I felt my pulse rise. What do we do? Marla spoke like a surgeon. We respond calmly. She tapped the filing. And we let him learn that he cannot move without consequences. We filed our own motion. A request for full financial disclosure. A formal demand for valuation across entities. And a protective order. Grant's lawyer called Marla within an hour. I listened on speaker. "Marla," the man said, "smooth, this is unnecessary. Your client is emotional. We can settle privately." Marla's voice was sweet. "My client is not emotional." She paused. "She is informed." The lawyer chuckled. Come on. Brittany has lived comfortably. She should be reasonable. Marla said, tell Grant to be reasonable. Silence. Then quietly the lawyer said, he is furious. Marla replied, he should have thought of that before he tried to take what is in her name. The line went dead. That was the first attempt. When fear failed, they moved to shame. Judith came to see me. Not alone. With Leonard. They arrived at the coastal house with a driver and a look of entitlement that made my skin crawl. Security checked them. They hated that. Judith stood in the foyer, eyes sharp, mouth tight. She looked around like she was inspecting a hotel room. This is pathetic, she said. Leonard said nothing. He watched me like a man assessing a rival. Judith stepped forward. You have embarrassed us, she said. You have embarrassed the father of your children. She lowered her voice, poisonous. And you have embarrassed yourself. You looked like a scorned girl at Christmas. I smiled. Scorned. I nodded slowly. Is that what you call 20 years of swallowing your son's behavior? Judith's eyes flashed. You knew who he was when you married him. Leonard finally spoke. We are prepared to be generous. His voice was calm. He slid a folder onto my table. A settlement. You sign. You go quietly. You keep some comforts. I looked at the folder and did not touch it. Judith leaned in. You are 43, she hissed. As if you will find better. As if anyone will take you with 5 children. You will crawl back, Brittany. You always do. My hands stayed still. My voice did not shake. You are wrong. Judith's mouth curled. You think you are brave. You are not brave. You are reckless. Marla stepped beside me. She is not reckless. Marla's smile was cold. She is done. Leonard's eyes narrowed. You don't understand the scale of the machine you are challenging. I met his gaze. I understand the scale perfectly. I said it softly. I have lived inside it. Judith snapped, give the properties back. I laughed. Short, sharp. No. Judith's face reddened. You cannot keep them. They are not yours. I tilted my head. My name is on them. Leonard's voice hardened. They are marital assets. Marla stepped forward. Then litigate, she said, and explain to a court why they were structured that way. She held Leonard's gaze. Explain why your son insisted on certain entities being out of reach. Judith went pale. Leonard's jaw tightened. He turned to me. His calm dropped. You are not smarter than us. I said, I am not trying to be smarter. I paused. I am trying to be free. Judith lunged a step closer. You will destroy your children's future. That was her sharpest weapon. The children. I felt heat rise up my throat. You do not get to use my children, I said, voice sharp now. You have used my children for 20 years. As props. As shields. As leverage. Judith hissed, they are Rosenstein's. I leaned forward. And they are also mine. Judith's eyes burned. Leonard lifted a hand, controlling her. He looked at me like a man making a decision. This ends with you losing, he said. Then he added, or it ends with you being isolated. I smiled. I was isolated in your mansion. I said it clearly. I was isolated in Monaco. I looked at Grant's father. I was isolated while your son followed girls to Dubai and came home smelling like lies. My voice rose. So do not threaten me with loneliness, Leonard. I am already an expert. Judith's face twisted. You were nothing when we found you. The restraint broke. I stood. My voice was not calm anymore. It was fire. You did not find me. I pointed at her. You found a young woman and you decided to own her. I stepped closer. You decided my beauty meant I would be obedient. You decided my background meant I would be grateful forever. Judith's lips curled. You were grateful. Until you aged. I felt my hands clench. Then I forced them open. I am still beautiful, I said. Not vanity. Truth. And even if I were not, you would still be vile. Judith flinched. Leonard's eyes hardened. He said, you will sign the settlement. I laughed. Loud this time. No. Judith snapped, then we will bury you. Marla's voice cut in. Judith froze. Marla looked at them both. You want her to sign. She smiled. Because you cannot afford discovery. Not with international partners. Not with lenders. Not with the kind of clout you brag about. Leonard's face changed. Just slightly. Judith's voice shook. You have no proof. Marla nodded. Maybe. She paused. But the question is, do you want to risk being wrong? That visit ended with no screaming. No slaps. Just Judith shaking with rage and Leonard looking at me like he had finally understood something. They left. And the house felt lighter. The third attempt came that same week. Paperwork. Grant filed for divorce in a jurisdiction he thought would favor him. He requested temporary custody arrangements. He requested restrictions on my spending. He requested the return of family assets. He also did something dirtier. He called my parents. My father's voice came through my phone like a punch. Brittany, he said, breathless, Grant's people called us. They said you are unstable. I closed my eyes. My mother's voice shook. They said you are having some kind of breakdown. Rage flooded me. I said, Dad, listen to me. I am not unstable. I am finally awake. There was a pause. Then my father said quietly, I always knew there was something wrong. You just never said it. I swallowed. I did not want you to worry. My father exhaled. Honey, we worried anyway. That night, I sat at the kitchen counter and stared at my wedding ring. Not the original ring. That had been upgraded after baby number 3, like a bribe. I slid it off. It clinked softly against the stone. I felt nothing. Then I felt everything. Marla called the next morning. They are leaking stories, she said. To who? To the Whisper Network. The donors. The wives. They are trying to paint you as unstable so nobody believes you if you ever speak. I laughed once. That is Grant's favorite trick. Marla said, then we flip it. Marla's voice sharpened. We don't respond emotionally. We respond procedurally. Within 48 hours, Marla had filed formal notices. Requests for preservation of evidence. Requests for communications involving trust restructuring. Requests for records tied to the entities in my name. Grant's lawyer called again, voice now less smooth. This is aggressive. Marla replied, so is lying. I could hear Grant in the background shouting something. The lawyer lowered his voice. Your client is making a mistake. Grant is prepared to fight. Marla said, good. Then she added, calm as death. Because every step he takes becomes another receipt. The first real crack came from Aaron. Aaron requested a private meeting. Not with me. With Marla. Marla allowed it. But she brought me. We met at a quiet restaurant in New York. Private booth, soft lighting. The kind of place secrets sit comfortably. Aaron looked tired. He had always looked smug before. Now he looked like a man who had realized the machine can crush its own operators. He said, Brittany? His voice was careful. I want you to understand I am not your enemy. I stared at him. You helped them trap me. He flinched. I followed instructions. Marla said, why are you here? Aaron swallowed. Because Grant is out of control. He looked down. He wants to force transfers. He is talking about pressuring you. I felt my stomach tighten. Marla said, Aaron exhaled. And if he forces it, it triggers scrutiny. He looked at me, eyes pleading. And if scrutiny comes, it does not stop at Grant. It touches everyone. There it was. Not remorse. Self-preservation. I leaned forward. What do you want? Aaron hesitated. Then he said a controlled exit. For everyone. Marla smiled slightly. That is not how this works. She paused. Brittany gets a controlled exit. You get whatever she allows. Aaron's face tightened. I have kids too. I nodded. So did I. My voice was cold. And you still signed things. Aaron looked down. Marla said, here is what will happen. Grant will be contained. She leaned in. And you will choose whether you want to be collateral damage. Aaron swallowed hard. What do you want? I looked at him. I want the truth. I said it clearly. I want every entity mapped, every transfer, every property, every structure that used my name as a shield. Aaron's mouth parted. That is dangerous. I smiled. I know. I leaned closer. That is why I am asking. Aaron stared at me. Then he nodded once, small, reluctant. That night, Aaron sent a file. Not everything, but enough. And when Marla's forensic accountant looked at it, he made a sound that was half whistle and half prayer. This is bigger than divorce, he murmured. This is a fortress. Marla nodded. And Brittany is holding the key. The next phase was Monaco. Grant went to Monaco in mid-January. Of course he did. When he was threatened, he ran to where the money slept. He posted nothing. But his friends did. A blurred photo. A yacht rail. A familiar harbor. And Brittany Rosenstein, the silly girl, watched. Marla contacted a second counsel. European. Discreet. The kind of lawyer who speaks in short sentences and never uses names in emails. Grant thought Monaco insulated him. It did not. It simply changed the paperwork. 10 Dubai. Grant flew to Dubai a week later. Business. I saw it in the calendar leak. I saw it in the flight plan. I saw it in the model posts, geotagged at a resort I recognized. The same balcony. The same skyline. A girl with glossy hair holding a drink and smiling like she had no idea what she was standing on. I did not feel jealousy. I felt disgust. Grant was still Grant. Cheat to end all cheats. Still shopping for attention while his world started to burn. And that is when Marla made her move. Not in court. In a boardroom. The Rosensteins had partners. Institutional partners. Banks. Funds. Developers. Men who did not care about affairs but cared deeply about risk. Marla did not accuse anyone of crime. She did not send a scandal letter. She did not threaten. She simply sent a formal notice. A statement that significant marital assets were under dispute. A statement that there were ownership questions tied to entities involved in ongoing transactions. A statement that discovery was likely and that preservation of records was required. It was polite. It was correct. It was lethal. Within 2 days, the first call came. A partner. A man Grant had taken to Monaco like a trophy friend. He called Grant. Then he called Leonard. And then Leonard called me. Leonard Rosenstein, the patriarch, called my phone directly. When I answered, his voice was different, still controlled. But now it held strain. Brittany, he said. I smiled. Leonard. He paused. Then he said, you have created instability. I said I created truth. He exhaled. You are putting deals at risk. I said that is not my problem. Silence. Then Leonard said slowly, what do you want? There it was. Not threats. Not shame. Not fear. Terms. I leaned back in my chair. I want what is mine. I said it simply. And I want my name left intact. Leonard's voice hardened. You will be blamed. I laughed softly. I paused. Just remember, the more you smear me, the more curious people become. Leonard was silent. Then he said, Grant is furious. I said, Grant can be furious. I added, he should be. Leonard's voice dropped. You will not win everything. I said, I don't need everything. I paused. I need enough. Leonard asked, quiet, how much is enough? I smiled. The line went dead silent. Leonard breathed out, slow. That is absurd. I said, for your family, it is a rounding error. I leaned forward. For me, it is freedom. Leonard said, the prenup. I said the prenup was a trap. I paused. And traps have consequences when they are discovered. Leonard said, you are threatening. I corrected him. I am stating reality. Leonard's voice sharpened. What makes you think you can keep assets in your name? I smiled. Because you put them there. I paused. And you cannot explain why without making yourselves look like criminals. Leonard's breath caught. I said, you built a machine that required a clean face. My voice turned colder. And then you treated that face like garbage. Leonard went quiet. Then he said, we will discuss. I said, good. Then I added, and Leonard, I let my voice sharpen. Tell Judith to keep my name out of her mouth. I paused. Or I will put hers into documents she cannot buy her way out of. Leonard did not respond. He hung up. That week, Grant tried one last dirty move. He showed up at the coastal house. No call. No warning. He arrived in a black car like he was coming to collect his property. He walked in with that confident stride. That prep school boy posture. That wealthy look that had always made people step back. Not me. He stood in my living room and looked around like he despised the fact my heir existed without him. He said, you are enjoying your little rebellion. I did not stand. I remained seated, calm. Hello, Grant. He scoffed. I am going to be clear. He stepped closer. You will sign the agreement. You will return what is not yours. And you will stop poisoning my family's name. I smiled. Your family poisoned itself. I said it plainly. I just stopped drinking it. His eyes narrowed. You think you are clever because you hired a shark lawyer. He laughed. You are still you, Brittany. A girl from nowhere. Playing dress up? That old insult. The one that used to make me shrink. It did not work anymore. I said I may be from nowhere. I paused. But I learned everything I needed to learn from you. Grant's jaw tightened. I made you. I stared at him. Then I said softly, no. I paused. You diminished me. His face twisted. You are ungrateful. I laughed. Ungrateful. I leaned forward. I gave you 5 children. My voice rose. I gave you loyalty you did not deserve. I pointed at him. And you repaid me by treating me like a decorative object you could threaten with paperwork. Grant barked. It worked. I smiled. It worked when I still believed you. Grant stepped closer, lowering his voice. You want 50 million. He said it like a sneer. You don't deserve 50 million. I stood now, slowly. Every inch of me steady. I deserve it because you used my name. I walked toward him. Close. You used me as a shield because you thought I would never turn. My voice sharpened. And now you cannot touch me without cutting yourself open. Grant's eyes flashed. You will regret humiliating me. I smiled. You humiliated yourself every time you followed another girl to Dubai and came home expecting me to smile. My voice turned brutal. You are not a man. You are an appetite with a watch. Grant's face went red. He hissed, "Careful." I stepped closer. "Or what?" I spoke softly. "You will threaten me with the prenup." I tilted my head. "Say it. Say the line. Do it." Grant's mouth opened. Then he stopped. Because he remembered Christmas. He remembered eyes watching. He remembered that the machine worked best in darkness. His voice lowered. "You don't know who you are dealing with." I smiled. "I have dealt with you for 20 years. I paused. "And I finally see you clearly." Grant's hands clenched. "You are going to destroy our children's respect for you." I laughed once. "They already saw you." I said it cold. "They saw you flirt with staff in your own home." I leaned in. "And they saw your mother grab my arm and spit at me like I was trash." Grant froze. His eyes widened slightly. "You told them." I smiled. "I did not have to." I said it plainly. "They were in the house, Grant. They have eyes. They have ears." My voice rose. "And they have something you never expected." Grant snapped. "What?" I said, "A mother who finally chose herself." Grant's face hardened again. He leaned close, voice low and ugly. "If you keep pushing, I will make you look insane." He said it slowly. "I will take the children. I will drag you through court. I will drain you until you beg." There it was. The implied evil. The real threat. The old one. And for a moment I felt my old self flicker. The young woman with the pen in her hand. The girl who signed because she believed love meant trust. Then I smiled. Not kind. Not pretty. Deadly. "Try it," I whispered. Grant's brow furrowed. I stepped back and spoke clearly. "If you try to paint me insane, discovery becomes unavoidable." I held his gaze. "And if discovery becomes unavoidable, your friends stop calling you." I paused. "Your partners stop trusting you." I smiled. "And your mother stops sleeping." Grant's throat bobbed. I continued. "You will not take my children." My voice sharpened. "And you will not drain me." I stepped closer again. "Because I am not alone anymore, Grant." He sneered. "You think your lawyer will save you?" I said no. I shook my head. "I think your own structure will destroy you if you keep pushing." Grant stared. Then he spat. "You were nothing. You will always be nothing." I looked at him and I let my voice become the burn you asked for. "You are 55 and you still need strangers to want you to feel alive." I said it slowly. "You are a married man who chases 20-year-olds because women your age can see your emptiness." I paused. "And you hate me because I survived you." Grant's face twisted. He looked like he wanted to hit something. But he did not. Because he was a coward in the way bullies always are. He stepped back. He smiled. That fake charm again. "You will come back," he said. "You always do." I smiled back. "No." I said it simply. "Not this time." Grant left that house with his shoulders stiff and his pride bleeding invisibly. And the next day, Leonard called again. This time, he did not threaten. He negotiated. The settlement meetings happened quietly. Lawyers in plain suits. Numbers on paper that made my old self dizzy. They offered 10 million. Then 15. Then 20. Each offer came with conditions. Silence clauses. Non disparagement. Restrictions. I refused. Not because I wanted more money. Because I wanted finality. At 25 million, Judith tried a different route. She sent a mutual friend. A woman who had once hugged me at a charity auction and whispered, "You are so lucky." The woman called me and said, "Brittany, be sensible. You don't want to ruin your children's world?" I said their world was already ruined. I paused. It just had nicer wallpaper. Then I hung up. When they reached 40 million, Leonard's voice sounded older. "This is unreasonable," he said. I replied, "So was the prenup." When they reached 48, Grant finally broke. He called me directly at midnight. His voice was rough, drunk, angry. "Fran, you think you won," he spat. I stayed quiet. He continued, voice rising. "You think you are some righteous martyr." He laughed bitterly. "You were happy. You were spoiled. You wore diamonds and smiled at Monaco, and you never complained when it mattered." I spoke softly. "I complained all the time." I paused. "You just trained me to stop." Grant's breathing sounded jagged. "You don't deserve this," he hissed. "You don't deserve 50 million. I finally let my voice harden. "I deserve every cent." I said it plainly. "Because I paid with my life." Grant snarled, "I loved you." I laughed. Not loud. Just real. "You loved what I did for you." I paused. "You loved that I kept quiet." Grant shouted, "You were supposed to keep quiet." There it was. The truth. I said, "Goodbye, Grant." And I hung up. 3 days later, Leonard agreed to 50. Not as generosity. As containment. The settlement was structured cleanly. Not sloppy. Not vindictive. A combination of property transfers, liquidity, and equity in smaller entities already in my name. Enough to reach the number without triggering a war that would drag their entire empire into light. And then the last consequence landed. Grant's peers did what wealthy peers do when a man becomes risky. They laughed quietly. They did not post. They did not shout. They distanced. A partner withdrew from a deal. A board seat became complicated. A friend stopped inviting him to Monaco because nobody wanted him around their wives and staff. Grant still had wealth, but he lost standing. And among men like Grant Rosenstein, standing is the true currency. I did not go on television. I did not publish receipts. I did not burn everything down. I simply left with what was mine. And I let the Whisper Network do what it does best. On the first Christmas after I left, I took my children to a smaller house. A real house. Not a museum of wealth. We decorated one tree. We made hot chocolate. We laughed. There were no reindeer. No ice sculptures. No string quartet. Just warmth. And that night, after the kids went to bed, I stood by the window and looked out at the snow. I thought of the girl I had been at 22. The girl who thought a man choosing her meant she was safe. And I smiled. Because now I knew. Safety is not a man. Safety is not money. Safety is not a mansion. Safety is knowing nobody can threaten you into silence ever again. My name is Brittany, and this was the last straw. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.